Welcome to Just a Farm Wife with your host, Tara Emerson. Tara is a farm wife, photographer, mom, podcaster, author, public speaker, and much more. On this podcast, Tara takes listeners on a journey through all aspects of life and how we can create future growth. This podcast helps to empower women to believe they are more than the labeling that society hands them. And remember, you are never just in anything.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Just a Farm Wife. I'm your host, Tara Emerson, and today we are going to start with part 3 of Trouble on the Family Farm. In the last few episodes, we have talked about the issues that we've had with my in-laws and how we've gotten to where we've gotten today. And today I want to give you some more updates of what's going on. The first update is that we have a court date, finally. I know that our attorney has been working really hard to get this. My in-laws attorney doesn't respond to things in a timely manner, and getting everything lined up, I know, took a lot of time. So our court date is in July. We're good with all of that. This might affect how we are able to show up at our county fair just because our court date is the following week, but that's okay. We will just figure it out. Closure at this point is more important than a lot of things. So we're really looking forward to that and really finally closing this out. And then I also want to thank you guys for listening to the previous episodes and talking about the things that I've posted on Facebook. And, I've been really vulnerable about our story and what's been going on. And it helped my heart to be able to be so honest and to be met with kindness and love and respect. So I really thank you for that. And I appreciate you guys talking about this in public and bringing this out in the open because it pretty much stopped the harassment. The harassment is just going through his attorney, which is fantastic because when you deal with it through the attorneys, that's when you get to deal with sane people. That's where we get to gain traction. In this whole situation, there hasn't been any sanity and any rationalization or any communication or talking points. And when we deal with just the attorneys and the court, they're able to take all those crazy things out of there and just focus on the facts. There isn't that retaliation. Yeah, I guess it's retaliation. So when you do something and you respond and you put up your boundaries, it's met by the other person with anger and threats and fear. And when you deal with attorneys, it just doesn't work that way. Yes, attorneys can, be scary and whatnot, but they're able to just stick to the facts and take all of that and all of the emotion out of the issues. So I'm really thankful for that. And now we get to just get to the bottom of everything and just have truth. That's all that really matters, right? Today, I'd also like to talk about our son and his experience in all this. And I asked his permission to discuss this, and he gave me his permission. I feel like in sensitive matters like this, it's really important to have honest conversations about what's going on. He agrees that our story needs to be shared, and I'm really thankful that he's willing to be honest about what his experience was. He didn't want to come on the podcast, but he gave me permission to discuss what has gone on because we've done all of this together. We're going to start where our son came in and started farming full time. So right after college, our son decided to start farming full time, which obviously we are thrilled about because he's a wonderful farmer. He's kind. He's conscientious. He has a great attention to detail. And we're really looking forward to carrying on our family legacy in a healthy way. But at the time when he came into farming is when we were really in the thick of this with his grandparents. So he has really only experienced the stressful parts of farming. When he started farming, we were really honest and open about our financials, what goes into farming on a day-to-day basis, and, that our willingness to teach him about everything day by day, right? That he wouldn't be alone in this, and he had the right to ask any questions that he wants, see any financial information, see any contracts, see anything that he wanted, especially after the experience that we were trying to get out of. I knew that that was the basis to start a good relationship in farming, because my husband and I never received that. We never received honesty or our questions answered or anything. So this was my number one goal, is to start a farming relationship and partnership with full transparency. And I believe when you work with any type of partner, I mean, especially with family, but with any type of partner, you have to be transparent about everything. Otherwise, you're going to harbor resentment and hard feelings, and it's just going to go downhill really fast. So we were in the thick of it, and we were honest with him about what his grandparents were doing the whole time before he was brought into this. A lot of the threats were, oh, I'm going to tell Evan about what you're doing and, all that kind of stuff. And it was just threats and fear that he was trying to trigger in us. And it didn't work because we were honest about everything at the start. So fast forward, when his grandparents realized that we weren't going to give in and let their dishonesty go, they started going after our son to pull him onto their side. Right before Christmas one year, this is a little bit hard to talk about because it's really awful. I could never imagine doing this to anyone, especially a grandchild, but his grandparents, especially his grandfather, just lost it and invited our son over to talk about his future. And for an hour and a half, our son had to endure his grandparents degrading and demeaning and lying about his mother, about me, for an hour and a half. And I can't imagine how traumatic and how awful of an experience that was for our son. My son and I are fairly close. Like, we talk to each other about a lot of things, and we're open and honest. I know I say honest a lot, but honest is really important to me. Honesty and integrity is incredibly important to me. It was an hour and a half of degrading, like telling him that I don't know what I'm doing in the farm paperwork. I have been stealing from him, and that our son shouldn't let me do his paperwork, and that even our accounting firm is crooked, and that our son shouldn't let them do anything, and just lie after lie after lie, and saying that I am destroying their family. Just all kinds of things like that. I just can't imagine sitting there and taking that all in, because whenever he speaks about me, my husband's father, whenever he speaks about me, he seethes with anger and hatred. And to be on the opposite end of that is just incredibly traumatic. And I just feel for him, and it's really important for him to heal from all that. And at that time, like around that time, our son was just trying to keep the peace, because that's who he is really fundamentally. He is incredibly level-headed and will listen to both sides of an argument and then make his conclusion afterwards. And he doesn't get too upset about things. Like, he just calmly makes a decision, comes to an understanding, and that sort of thing. So at that time, that's kind of where he was. And he knew, going into that conversation, he knew about everything that was happening. And so he was able to decipher the truth from the lies. And there really wasn't much truth in anything that they said in that conversation. And then there were a few conversations afterwards just to sell beet stock and whatnot. And that all got finalized and everything was done. So they got all that done. And then we went back to the settlement agreement, and that finally got finished. And I talked about that in the previous episode. And we had gotten everything hashed out, and it went through the attorneys. We refused to allow anything to happen between our in-laws and us without going through an attorney, because we knew that this type of situation would happen, where he would go back on what he said, because it's a pattern of behavior for him. My husband's father goes back on his word on every single deal he's ever made, which is why he's had 5 business partners. I think it's 5. I'm not positive, but I think it's 5. That their business partnership blew up in flames at the end, and they never talked to each other again. And that pattern of your behavior really, I mean, it's followed suit. Like, if you give them one thing, it's that my in-laws are consistent. So, and they're consistent in their patterns. So anyways, they made an agreement to purchase one piece of equipment, and every time our son tried to pay for that piece of equipment or do a purchase agreement or whatnot, and even the purchase agreement, he tried direct with my father-in-law, and then next we sent it through the attorney, and we didn't ever get a response. So at the end of the farming season, because he wouldn't allow our son to purchase that piece of equipment. Well, for one, we never used it all year. And secondly, farming, it's crazy busy. Some things just don't get done until all the crop is off and everything is tilled and all of that. And we put that piece of equipment back in his yard, and here he is going around telling everyone that our son stole from him. And I think I talked about that a little bit in the last episode. That brings us to what else is going on by his grandparents bad-mouthing him and saying to anyone who will listen that he stole, and who knows what they all said. But essentially by telling other landowners and that sort of thing that you stole, that you've been stolen from, well, that creates distrust in the landowner and renter agreements. It destroys trust in each other, which is a horrible thing to do. Why would you go after your grandson like that? Just because he doesn't see eye to eye on a situation with you? I mean, it's ridiculous. This whole story is just so out there for me. Like, I just cannot imagine ever doing this to my kids, let alone my grandkids, bad-mouthing them so much that some of these landowners quit renting land to our son. So our son now has lost over half of his acres for 2025, which is a hard hit. It's a hard blow. And it's really, really sad that one person can do that to someone. But instead of being depressed and heartbroken and angry, our son has decided to take it as an opportunity to learn and an opportunity to grow. When you start out farming and then it's this traumatic for so long, losing half your acres might be a sign from God. And we really believe that it's a sign from God that maybe he needs to step away and redirect his life and really heal from this experience and then decide what to do with his life. When you start farming, right out of college, you came from farming in high school and then you go to college and then go right back to farming. You haven't really experienced a lot outside of the farm life. So losing these acres really made him want to redirect his life. So in 2025, our son took a job for CHS, and him and his wife will be moving not too far away, but far enough where we'll miss seeing him every day. And we are really proud of him for listening to God's word and listening to God's timing in his life, to know that sometimes you need to take a step back from the experience so that you can really heal. And maybe he'll come back to farming. Maybe he won't. But he is going to still farm. Like, he still has some land, so he'll still farm a little bit. And he'll be around, which is great, because it would be heartbreaking to see him completely go. But we are just so proud that he took all of this with emotional maturity and not taking it on himself, thinking that he was bad and he was the reason that this happened and that sort of thing. And to have the confidence to know that you are whole as you are, and you are not what your grandparents say you are. because all they're trying to do is control your reality. And I am so proud of him for knowing the difference and seeing the world through a lens of opportunity instead of seeing it through a lens of fear and control. I just think that this was a sign. And so obviously, so does my son and his wife. And we are really proud of them, and we will miss them on the farm every single day. But just know that he'll be back and he'll be around. He's still going to farm what he does have. So 2025 is going to look a lot different for us, and that's okay. I also believe that every challenge is an opportunity for growth and learning more about yourself and a way to get fine-tuned and focused on what you want out of life and where God calls you to be in life. And I want to end, well, I guess not completely end, but I want to talk about this quote by Maya Angelou. You do what you know to do, and when you know better, you do better. And this quote, just when I was planning this podcast and thinking about it, that quote kept coming to mind. And that quote was sitting in my mother-in-law's kitchen for many years. And I find it ironic that we're in the situation that we are, and they have been presented just as much as us and just as much as our son. We've all been presented with all of these storylines and weaknesses within ourselves that God is asking us to change, and God is asking us to do better. But even with that quote sitting in your kitchen window every time you wash dishes, it still didn't make a difference. You really have to make a choice in your life to do better. It's a choice that you make over and over and over again every single day. When all of these little issues come up, when all of these weaknesses come up, it's your choice to do better. And in 2025, that is my main goal, is to do better. And I wish that for you as well, is that when you decide to know better, to do better, and that's what creates change in the world, right? Change starts with you and what happens in your own home and your own business and your own life. And if we can continue on that path, that's what makes the world a better place. So I want to thank you for listening to my podcast. I really appreciate you listening, and I can't believe it's the end of 2024. It went by so fast. And I really look forward to what's to come in 2025 and being completely free. So Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you for listening to today's episode. And remember, you are never just an anything.